finally have a nice day, and we decided to go see the one historical place we really wanted to see once we accepted this sit, which is a village that was destroyed as the Germans retreated after the landing at Normandy. So in June, they came through this particular village and just destroyed it. And the people of France decided to keep it as an example of one of the things that happened during the war. So this is called the Village Martyr Centre Les Memories, and we're not allowed to take pictures or video inside the building, but once we get out into the village, I guess we'll take a few. Interesting fact about your uncle.
About my uncle?
Uncle Corky.
Oh, yeah. My uncle George Kelly, otherwise known as Corky, was at D-Day in the invasion. He came ashore at Normandy. So.
And I'm going to add the picture here of him on the cover of Life magazine, the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, picture of him on the cover of Life magazine. He was in France.
Pretty amazing. Bruce and I have just left the visitor center of Oradour-sur-Glane. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. There were no pictures allowed inside. The images were horrific. I had never heard of this horror in which Waffen-SS officers and soldiers came into this little town in France, rounded up the entire citizenry, and slaughtered them. 643 people. I wept during the video when they talked about the women and children who had been put in the church. They threw in chemicals and lit them on fire to try to gas them. And
threw grenades and then opened up with machine guns inside the church.
And then
over 400 women and children.
And then they tried to bomb off the roof. And they talked about when they found some of the bodies, there was a little boy with his head down in prayer in one of the confessionals, and two boys of about 12 hiding, wrapped in each other's arms.
And a baby carriage with a baby about 10 months old at the bottom. And then they came back the day or two after and rounded up all the bodies and burned them and put them in mass graves to deny the families any peace and measure of mourning or the ability to identify anybody.
It was one last...
And set fire to the town.
Yeah. And some of the information about when they rebuilt the town right next door to this old burned out town, they hired architects to come in and design new homes, and everything was painted gray because it was a town of mourning. For decades, these people lived in a town of mourning. Horrible story, one I've never heard. It occurred in France, Vichy France, which was, the Vichy government was just a puppet to Germany.
Just after the Normandy invasion.
Yeah. And
there was resistance fighting in the area.
And one of the generals said the only way to stop it would be to brutalize the citizenry. So they did. They picked this village and they came in and they destroyed it.
Basically to make an example.
Yeah. People were pulled out of their houses and had no clue what was going on and why the soldiers would be there, and they couldn't understand. And men were separated from the women. Men put in a couple of different areas and told that the village would be searched for weapons. And the men knew there weren't any, so they felt confident that they were going to be all right. And the soldiers just opened fire, killed them where they stood, and then went after the women in the church. Horrible story, and one that deserves some recognition and understanding. church where the women and children of this tiny little village were gathered up by the Nazis. And we're standing right outside of one of the places where a bunch of the men were killed. But the church itself held 400 women and children.
And it's not a big church.
No.
And it was
Pretty little church.
sobering to stand there. I had a moment when everyone else left, walked out, and I was basically standing in there by myself, and all I could think was that there were over 400 people in this little space who lost their lives all at one time.
Massacre.
And you look around and you see the bullet holes in the walls and in the altar. Obviously, it's not a sanctified church any longer, but the altar pieces and things are still there. Statues are all gone, but
Horrible thing.
to think that it was not ancient times, it was not medieval times. You know, you see a lot of historical places where there were battles and things like that, and this wasn't a battle. This was a massacre.
Less than a century ago.
And it was during my parents' lifetimes. In fact, my father, we were just talking about it, my father got to Europe not long after this happened, in World War II. And it's just...
The inhumanity is sobering.
Yeah.
And Bruce mentioned a little while ago how at Christmas time in the trenches in World War I, the men in each side sang and took a kind of a night off.
You hear the stories about the Germans celebrating Christmas during World War I
Yeah.
in the trenches, and the Germans being Christian, and
Singing along with the French soldiers in their trench.
this was a church that they brutally murdered women and children in,
Yeah.
apparently without even flinching.
Evil.
So
Well, the only difference is Hitler.
it's
They were at war with France both times, but the difference, I think, was that Hitler. In World War
Nazism,
II.
and it's
He was
just
just.
inexplicable. It's
It is. Definitely a sobering trip today.